Somebody crown me with love. Somebody force me to care. Somebody make me come through. I'll always be there, as a friend as you, to help us survive. Being alive. Being alive. Being alive.
Thank you so much for being here. We are so grateful for you joining us on this Monday night in the middle of the week. Thank you for your presence.
We are so grateful. We created Recover Me because we wanted to share an array of mental illness narratives in the hopes of just kind of illuminating more what it's like to have different types of mental illnesses. And we're hoping that through this education, we can empower healing within all of us, because there is a community and we are all the community, whether we know it or not. So we just want to create a space that's great and big and open for everybody. So thank you guys so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Just to introduce ourselves, I'm Yadi, and
I'm Alexis.
yeah, and we're the artistic directors of Recover Me, so thank you for being here. Before we continue, we'd like to give thanks to our partnering theaters who helped us produce the event and who have pieces within the show. Among them are Tuyo Theater, Maarta Theater Collective, Blind Spot Collective, Diversionary, and Signet Theater as well. So thank you to all of them and their artists who are joining us today. We also have Rago, Nami, and
The DBT
the
Center,
DBT Center in San Diego, yes. Virago actually has a silent auction happening in the lobby, so during our 15-minute intermission, if you'd like to make a bid on that, you're more certainly welcome to do so. We'll announce the winner at the end of the intermission. Yes, and we'd also like to thank NAMI specifically for being here, because they provide a variety of programs for people with different kinds of mental illnesses and different needs in our local community here, and they'll be joining us for a talk back afterwards. And this event is actually functioning as a fundraiser, so all of the proceeds of this event are going to benefit their programming. Yeah.
We also wanted to give a big shout out to Dylan Jacobs for funding our project. We are so grateful for you, because we wouldn't be here without you. We'd also like to thank the Park family and the Gold family, and all of you for being here.
Yay! A couple of other logistical things you should know about. So,
Important stuff.
In the case of an emergency, please take note of the emergency exits to your right or to your left. If you're upstairs, it'll be right up the stairs the same way you came in. And if you have any hard candies that you'd like to enjoy during the performance, please unwrap those now so they're not crinkling during the show. There are a number of trigger warnings in your programs. If you're able to look that up in the center, you'll see each piece. Some of them have some trigger warnings. If you find that any of them might be too difficult for you personally to watch, in transitions, you'll see a pretty blue light on stage. You're welcome to exit the theater and then walk back in after that piece is over, because we recognize that explicit content can be difficult. And then, last thing, please turn off or silence your cell phones now.
Thank you very
We
much.
ask that you refrain from taking any kind of video or photography as a courtesy to our actors.
We also have that covered for you. We're having this whole thing. Right now it's going to be recorded, and we're also live streaming. So, hey out there to all of our directors and players who couldn't be here.
Hey our remote audience. All right, great. Well, without further ado, thank you for being so patient and sitting through all of those announcements. Without further ado.
All right, we present to you Recover Me, an evening of rebranding mental health.
Thank you very much.
Diagnosis is from a lovely little show called Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend. It is basically when the character Rebecca gets diagnosed right before she gets diagnosed with a certain mental illness, and this is also my good friend Oceana, who will be accompanying me. And the reason I chose this song is because it can't always be easy to figure out what's going on in our brains, but sometimes just having the comfort of a diagnosis, and even those knowing our diagnosis as well, can make the world a little more peaceful for everyone. So hope you enjoy it. Thank you guys for being here tonight. For almost 30 years, I know something was wrong, but Mom says weakness causes bloating, so I try to be strong. Fake it till you make it, that's how I got by. And when I tried to find my reason for my sadness and terror, all the solutions were trial and error. Take this pill, say this chant, move here for this guy. Now there's no need for regret, 'cause I'm about to get a diagnosis, Don't tell me no, sister, you don't fit in. Doc, prescribe me my tribe, give me my throng. Tell me that this whole time I belonged with those other people who share my diagnosis. What could it be? What could be right? Schizophrenic or bipolar light? It's all so confusing, I don't know where to start. Obsessive with numbers, hoarders with cats. I could really rock a tinfoil hat. Perfect, they're not, but at least they know who they are. No more bad pills, fads, or tricks. Who says there isn't an easy fix with a diagnosis? I'm ready to blow it. Joint and by joint, I mean my inner sense of confusion. I'm aware mental illness is stigmatized, but the stigma is worth it if I realize who I'm meant to be, armed with my diagnosis. Oh, the doctors that I've met who didn't get me. This one naturopath used feathers to pet me. They said anxiety, insomnia were my affliction. The naturopath said it was sex addiction. But all these things I knew I wasn't. Yes, I like penises, but who doesn't? So put me in a bottle, slap a label on, list out my side effects and worries be gone. 'Cause finally I'll know this. My diagnosis!
Ready? Okay. B-I-P-O-L-A-R, bipolar! Polar!
with ADHD, and then finally, bipolar disorder. Either way, having an undiagnosed mental illness doesn't exactly make you the most popular kid in class. I don't know if it's because I'm brown or because I have a mental illness or I'm just sexually obsessed or because I'm weird, but being different the way I'm different wasn't exactly a good thing in Huntington Beach, California. Catholic Church didn't help either. No, I'm a half manic, half depressive, half brown, half white. The first day of catechism, I knew I was screwed. Too dark of a soul and skin to be saved. I knew I didn't belong. White church, white Mary, white everything. I would beat myself for being brown, dirt brown, shit brown. Anyway, after I got my diagnosis, I realized that maybe it wasn't so bad. Ready? Okay! Have a feeling you must love drinks with vodka and some rum, yeah! Genetically, I'm fucked. I mean, pick a side of the family, white or brown, and you'll find a little bit of mental illness here and a little bit of alcoholism there. Not that I'm complaining. I mean, a bipolar and alcoholic combo is a morning after like no other. It makes for some good stories. They all merged together for me my freshman year in a marriage of oh fuck. Yeah. There are the silly stories, and then there are the real stories. My real feelings. My drunken tube-top ramblings at 3 a.m. Looking in the mirror through a fuzzy focus of blackened eyes after a night of drinking my heart and dreams away. The white dove beating inside my chest behind my ribcage, begging me to crack myself open to let it out from the confinement of my soul and body. Getting sober led to my diagnosis. Well, to be fair, I didn't exactly tell the doctor that I had a bit of an alcohol problem. I straight up lied. So when I got sober, I was too embarrassed to tell him. It took another year of sobriety and another dark depression and a psychiatrist, when I didn't like to get the correct diagnosis. Bipolar disorder and a new round of meds, each one with a lovely array of side effects. With Lexapro, I had to look up to see the curve. Cymbalta just spaced me the fuck out. I did some weird neck twitchy thingies with Zoloft, forgetting to take Lamictal makes for some fuzzy, fucked up, pukey feeling in the morning, and 2 days without Versteeg makes for really fucked up dreams. And the feeling of the blood in your brain just pulsing with your heartbeat all day long. Hey, wanna be celibate? Take some Prozac. You'll never want to have sex again. Ever. I went without medication for 6 months, and that was straight up disastrous. I mean, bottom line, I need meds. You need a stipend you can't pay? Have no health insurance? Get out the way! Fuck you, health insurance! Getting your diagnosis is half of the battle, actually it's a third. The other 2/3 are access to medication and doctors. Finding adequate health care is just as frustrating as this disorder. Especially when you don't have health care. It's like, yay! I know what's wrong with me and I have the tools, but fuck me, I can't get them! I get so tired. So tired from this disorder, always fighting, feeling like a junkie, hoarding medication and prescriptions, not to get high, but to survive. Always looking for the next fix and dealing with the repercussions years later. Ready? Okay! Crazy Grandma! even fetishize myself in a poem as a chronic masturbator and second-rate song leader. Also, you won't see me. But what I won't do is talk about the two women in my family that haunt me. My manic depressive grandmother and my twin sister who died at birth. Only one word describes Nana. Vivid. To the outside world, she was beautiful, charismatic, selfless, and ballsy. But to her family and the people she thought crossed her, she was vindictive, manipulative, vain, and spiteful. I fought my diagnosis for a long time. And just like Nana, I manipulated doctors to get what I wanted. Pills and a diagnosis I could accept. But in my heart of hearts, I knew. I don't want to vilify my Nana. God knows her childhood was no picnic, and she was never unkind to me, but being like Nana and my family was the worst thing you can be. When I got my diagnosis, I had to accept that I am like Nana. Both of us bipolar, both of us performers, both of us addicted, and both of us with a strong sexual and cultural background. My Trinity. My sister, the maiden. My grandmother, the destroyer. And well, I'm the preserver. Of what? I'm not sure of.
Hello everybody, I'm Nick, and this evening I'll be sharing a testimonial about living with mental illness and recovery. These are not my words, but I'm very honored to share them with you. I find a lot of power in them, and I hope that you do too. When I was 12 years old, I would cry to my mom, begging her that we would move because I thought people were going to kill me. Just anxiety, I thought. But the fear never went away. Everywhere I went, I was hyper-vigilant. I was trying my best to make it to my next birthday. Eventually, that led to me never leaving the house except for school and work. When I finally decided to see a therapist to try to overcome this fear, things went a bit different than I thought they would. She began using words like schizophrenia and psychosis, but never went on to diagnose me. I began noticing things I hadn't before, seeing shapes and faces, and occasionally hearing things. During therapy, I learned that these were stress-induced. Working 2 jobs and being a full-time student was stressful. When I hit my lowest, I quit school. I spent a week in a psychiatric ward, and then I left both my jobs without notice. Soon after, I stopped therapy. I was numb for quite some time. With the encouragement of my new partner, I got back into therapy, but she was not the right therapist. After a few months, I finally got the courage to go back into therapy and begin the whole process again. I honestly cannot say how happy I am to be in therapy. In November, I will have been with my therapist for a year. And over the course of the year, I've learned a lot about myself. I suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, which triggers my major depressive disorder and paranoid-induced anxiety. I also have mild obsessive-compulsive disorder. I have learned what my triggers are, and I have learned how to cope during the moments that I feel like I have no hope. But most importantly, I have learned that I'm okay. I was worried about a label. I was worried that people would think I was broken or crazy because of the stigmas attached to some of the words I've mentioned. Maybe I am a little broken, but we all are. The best advice I can give to someone going through this, or learning about their diagnosis is to remember that these words do not define you. You may have depression, but you are not depression. It is only a piece of you, and your other pieces shine far brighter. Taking time for self-care is not selfish, because caring for yourself is the most important thing you can do. Lastly, it is okay to not be okay. Just don't live in that moment. Acknowledge it, thank it for keeping you alive, and then move on to your next journey. Your recovery starts with you.
Hi, my name is Christian,
My name is Xavier.
and we'll be performing a piece entitled Emergency Contact by
Nick Malikow.
Nick Malikow. Who's Casey?
What?
Krill is seriously blowing up your phone, man. 10 messages, 25 missed calls.
That is not yours.
25. Sean, where are you?
Just give that.
Sean, you can't
Give that.
just do this
Give that.
anymore.
That-
You need
that
to
is
tell
not
us
your-
where you are.
You just
I'm
give
gonna
that
call
back.
mom
Of course, this is
and
none of your
dad down
fucking
in
business.
Florida
Are you
if
serious?
you don't. I'm gonna call Dr. Marsh.
Damn it, she called her.
Oh, and one missed call from Dr. Marsh. Kinda is my business. See, I'm here with my ex and
No, don't talk about
he doesn't
things
even
that
know
you-
you. You can
First
be
of
a
all,
serial
don't talk about
killer.
you don't fucking know
Hey, back off, back off. All right, just calm down. All right, calm down. Just chill out. I'm just trying to figure out. I'm just want to know why you're acting so goddamn sketchy. Okay, calm down,
Shit. I'm sorry.
dude. Just slow down.
I'm sorry.
You didn't hurt me, okay? Ah, dude, I didn't mean to. Hey. Here. Come on.
No.
Come on, hand. All right, just breathe in, out. Breathe in, out. You're just having a.
I know, I'm just having it.
Okay. You should have some.
Just leave me alone.
I used to get them a lot when I was a kid. My mom was an expert at getting me down. I guess sometimes I think I must be too. Alright, are you just gonna sit there and sulk until morning?
Casey is my sister. I got into a fight with my sister. That is why I don't go home. She's my roommate. She's definitely home. And Dr. March is...
Yeah?
Casey told me one last chance. And then she was going to call mom and dad to, about following up, about getting a job. Told me since I was released. She said that. Released. Not that she meant it, I don't think. I don't think she did it to be mean about it.
And so she meant that by like...
Because I wasn't captive. I wasn't in an insane asylum. Inpatient. It was inpatient, okay? Just a week-long program to help with my anxiety.
Oh,
Bad anxiety. outpatient program just a few months. Wasn't working, was living at home, and living with Casey was, a second step to, but yeah, the interviews, I had a couple, like Starbucks, fucking Target, I don't know. The last one was gonna be, it was this morning, or it was supposed to be this morning, which is why I'm, I don't normally wear stuff like this all the time. But third time was gonna be the charm. But just like all the other fucking interviews, I got to the door and got that sinking, warm, stomach churning feeling, that throat getting wet, about to vomit feeling, the actual vomiting outside of the place feeling. I used to do debate in high school, Like this feeling is sort of like stage fright, only in high school, the stage fright would just dissolve when I got out there, but it doesn't anymore. So I didn't go in the door, I didn't go home, because that is what Casey said. One more time, that third time, and she was gonna call mom and dad.
Looks like she did a lot more than just call mom and dad.
I know.
So where'd you go?
When
You went AWOL and just disappeared all day.
do you even care? Revere. That is where I go when I want to poof, disappear. When I panic, when my anxiety starts acting up, whether it's snowing, raining, 100 freaking degrees. The last stop is called Wonderland, right? For some reason I thought I'd be happy sitting at a place called Wonderland, just right under that stupid blue sign at the train station, surrounded by ugly, concrete, brutalist condos. And I just went there and would walk back from the beach to the station just all day, all night, till the train stopped. So I just got up and I came back here.
Here?
Yeah.
You walked here from Revere. That's fucking that's far.
8 miles?
Jesus Christ.
So, I'm not a serial killer or whatever, you said. I'm just a really, really weird guy.
All right, Poindexter. That's not that big of a deal.
No, don't tell me that. And also, don't call me that.
All right, it's a big fucking deal. What do you want?
I don't want anything. I don't need you to say anything.
Then I won't say anything.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to push you.
It's
earlier.
okay.
No, it's not okay, but...
You're Adam's apple.
What?
The part Derek said that the body part Derek said he would like most about you. Remember, I bet Adam's apple. Like, most guys don't really have one, and some have a totally huge one, but yours is a good size. It's stubbly. It's good. I wasn't trying to don't worry about it.
I'm not a professional actor. I'm here to tell you a little bit of my story. So in 1982, I was living in Florida, attending the community college, getting straight A's, living with my father and his new family. I had never been involved with drugs or crime. I was in the honor society. I did have undiagnosed ADD and undiagnosed depression, primarily due to my mother having emotionally and psychologically abused me from the time as far back as I can remember. My mother was homophobic, and she had some extremely toxic ideas about masculinity. One October night, my father rummaged through my belongings and found my adult magazine intended for gay men. In a fit of rage, she disowned me My mother, never needing persuasion to join in my abuse, permanently disowned me as well. I had nowhere to go. I fell through the enormous crack in our safety net, and I spent 4 years homeless. I had nowhere to go. I was a geeky, nerdy, socially awkward 19-year-old with no work skills or experience to speak of, severe scoliosis, and a broken left wrist, a bone that could not be reset because my mother would not call an ambulance until I quit crying at age 9 because boys don't cry in our house! I had nowhere to go. The closest thing I had to a friend was Kevin, who would pay me just enough money to survive in my car for a week or two, if I would have sex with him, but never enough money to get an apartment. There were no government benefits available to me. The government didn't believe I had worked long enough to have earned any benefits. And you try getting a job with no address, no phone number, no experience. It's impossible. So how did I survive? Miracles, essentially. I had help from people that I could never have expected help from. One lady, a stranger, practically gave me a perfectly good yacht of a car. It was a 1973 metallic navy blue Pontiac Catalina. And that car sparkled like the night, and I slept in it for 7 non-consecutive months. These days, my security needs are all being met. But the nightmare didn't end 33 years ago when I got a good union job with benefits. It continues even now with PTSD that causes flashbacks and sleepless nights and forces me to do battle daily to keep my head above depression. In my estimation, homelessness in America amounts to a systemic annihilation of society's weakest and most vulnerable members. 1 out of 4 LGBT youth who come out to their parents gets disowned by one or both of those parents. And 40% of homeless youth are LGBT. What this means is that anybody can fall through the cracks. Our social safety net is woefully inadequate. And even if you don't currently have a mental illness, the torture of homelessness could render just about anyone that way. Thank you.
Today's honor. Hi, I'm Alyssa Austin. And this is an excerpt from the play Purging by Anne Marley.
We chose to focus on the chaotic nature of this piece through movement, to express the way that the body often knows our struggles before we do. As I fall asleep, I list the playwrights that amaze me.
Artaud, Antonin,
Beckett, Samuel,
Corneille, Pierre,
Durang, Christopher.
E.
I cannot think of one. I'll come back.
Flores, Maria Irene.
G.
I cannot think of one. I'll come back.
Hugo, Victor,
Ibsen, Henrik.
Johnson, Ben,
Kane, Sarah.
Logan, John,
Mamet, David.
N.
I cannot think of one. I'll come back.
O'Neill, Eugene,
Pinter, Harold.
Q.
I cannot think of one. I'll come back.
Rule, Sarah,
Shaw, George Bernard.
Treadwell, Sophie.
U.
I cannot think of one. I'll come back.
V.
I think I should count Paula Vogel, but I have not read one of her plays.
Williams, Tennessee.
X.
I cannot think of one. I'll come back.
I considered changing the first letter of my last name.
Yorkie, Brian.
Zola, Emil.
Some nights I am asleep by Mamet. It is unfortunate to make it to Zola. I cannot sleep. It may take hours of delirious panic.
I do not like Shakespeare.
I like dark plays. I like strange plays, but I do not like Sam Shepard.
As I walk across the parking lot,
As I walk across campus,
as I walk across the hall,
my hand twitches for my phone.
I must read something.
I must look at something.
I read what other people have written today. I read pointless post after post after post.
I feel accomplished when people like my own pointless posts.
I get frustrated when people ask me questions.
I feel uncomfortable.
I slur my words.
I make lists.
To-do lists every single day.
Print something.
Read something.
Write something.
Paint something.
Sing something.
Clip your toenails.
Laundry.
Grocery list.
Strawberries.
Cereal.
Coffee creamer.
Pepsi.
Lists of the book I want to read, the movies I want to see, and the TV shows I'll spend hours listening to for the background noise.
I do not like silence.
Lists of the lists I need to make.
Do not stop moving.
I cannot stop moving because it is behind me, waiting.
I feel my blood about to burst as thoughts swell. I feel the water rising in my head. I feel the fog rise above my eyes, and I must talk to someone.
Distraction!
Avoidance.
Eternally running. Running, 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 running,
Falling.
running, 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 running,
Crashing.
running, 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 running. I do not like my birthday.
To plan my own birthday parties.
I wish someone wanted to celebrate my birth.
People do want to celebrate my birth.
Do I?
You never had a happy birthday.
I tried so hard.
I like to make things special for people.
You cried.
I love Christmas.
I get to make lists.
Once a boy asked me if I liked anything at all.
Once a boy told me I was miserable to be around.
I defended myself.
I loathed myself.
I love Christmas movies.
They remind me of a happiness in a time before I was too smart for my own good.
When I didn't have to think about anything.
They're unscathed by sadness and scratches and bruises, and I take pictures of Mickey Mouse.
I hang them in my room.
20 of them.
I do not want to live in an asylum.
This place feels like an asylum.
You're not here. You're not here. You're not here. A, B, C.
C, D, E. Every breath you take, every move you make, every bond you break, every step you take, I'll be watching you. When I'm not watching something, I'm listening to music.
I am singing.
I like dark music.
My mom says that's not good for me.
You say she doesn't know what she's talking about.
I say that nothing makes me feel as alive as listening to music.
I feel it like my heart is overflowing. Deluge. I used to be immeasurably happy singing in my car.
Then I crashed it.
His name was Landon.
Now I do not feel safe.
I have frequent visions of cars hitting me.
I check, and 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 check.
Scream.
I drive you insane.
I do not like driving in the sand.
I do not like driving at night.
I am too scared.
Scared.
Afraid.
Always.
Embarrassment.
Embarrassment.
Shame.
I cannot sit down without something in my lap.
Usually a blanket.
Sometimes a pillow.
Keeps me grounded.
Preferably a screen.
Or a book.
I love autobiographies.
I do not like self-help books.
Am I smart? Please tell me I'm smart. I did not do well on my SATs.
Or my GRE.
I want to get my PhD.
I am smart. I am smart. I am
Despite
smart. I am
scores,
smart. I
despite
am
my
smart.
inability to
I am
convey the
smart.
things that
I am
I'm
smart.
thinking.
Pathetic.
Pathetic is my least favorite word.
It stings like.
Stomach aching.
Why is it that spending time with you is so much more satisfying than spending time with anyone else?
I cannot cook, but I love to bake.
I miss you constantly. I ache for you nightly.
I'm scared of you. I shouldn't be.
I miss you constantly. I ache for you nightly.
I'm scared of you. I shouldn't be.
I miss you constantly. I ache for you nightly. I am scared of you. I shouldn't be. Should I be?
Existentialism.
Why?
Everything is empty.
Everything is pointless.
Is it?
Does it make you happy?
It makes me happy.
You make me happy.
I'm not happy.
You should be.
How was your day?
Okay.
My day was great.
The Center for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that 1 in every 4 people is suffering from some form of mental illness right now. Over the course of a year, 4 different schools in San Diego conducted over 100 interviews with different people whose lives have been shaped from mental illness. These interviews were then used to create a play called Untold, featuring real plays and real people's stories. Tonight you will meet 4 of them.
To protect their identities, all but one of their names have been changed, but their words have not. Every story you hear tonight will be repeated, word for word, verbatim. We can't introduce you to everyone in the next 10 minutes, but we hope you hear something you haven't heard before.
It's cleansing to tell the story. These stories need to be told. We met dancing and dated for about 5 years. After about 5 years, the stuff in my husband's head started to bother him, started to show.
Alice Kincaid, activist and grandmother.
And there wasn't any help or agency he could go to, so we had a total nervous breakdown. We split and he was hospitalized for about 3 or 4 months. About 4 years later, we reconnected, got back together, and got married, and had 2 children, who witnessed a lot subsequently.
My first deployment was in 1999.
Peter McClure, Marine Corps veteran.
We trained in North Africa, which was probably the hottest I've ever been. And then my first time in combat, which everyone reacts to that differently. No 2 people are exactly the same. And then I was blown up in Iraq, 2006.
I was driving and I was making a left-handed turn when we were rear-ended violently from behind. He became very agitated and was like, "What's that?" It sounded like a bomb. I had an Accord and we were rear-ended by one of those big old Cadillacs, and it kind of bounced off of us, and I'll keep this short, but it triggered a PTSD episode, and 17 days later he took his life. And that's how Vietnam trailed him throughout his entire life.
My buddy was wounded on the same deployment I was wounded on, and he never fully recovered. He ended up taking his own life, and I'm the one who had to fly his body home. That was a pretty emotional period of time for me. He didn't die right in front of me, but the wounds the physical, emotional, and psychological wounds that he received on that deployment are what drove him to take his own life.
These stories need to be told. You youngsters need to know, because now you're in this bubble of high tech with games and violent games depicting war, and you're there with your thumbs on the controls, but in reality, this is what it really does. It affected me, it affected his parents, it affected our children, and what's interesting about Vietnam is because of the draft, more men went into the military than they do now. Our cousins, our uncles, our brothers, our boyfriends, our husbands, so many of the women of my generation married the men who brought these traumas home, and we created the children that are now the 2nd generation of the pain of Vietnam.
I have PTS, post-traumatic stress. So if you can imagine the mind as a tree, and you have this stress blowing against it, it's really, really hard, really powerful wind. Some people's minds will break, and for those people, they'll need years and years of counseling and medication and who knows what else. But then there's other people who, it's like defensive football. You gotta bend but not break. But know that it may never be straight up and down again. It may be better than it was when it was bent all the way over or broken, but I'll never be the same. You can use my real name. There's nothing to hide. There wasn't. Never.
Leia Zolina, mother of 2.
I don't think Jay struggled with any mental issues, because if he did, we would know. I mean, we're very close. close-knit family. My husband's always with his children, and I'm always with them. So as far as mental struggles, I didn't see that in my son at all. We didn't see that in Jay. I mean, Jay, I could be at the gym exercising, and I hear all these other mothers complaining about their sons, and I just couldn't relate because my boys are just not like them.
I'd say it has taken me a really long time to figure out what good mental health looks like because I grew up without a good sense of what solid mental health looks like because my mother was bipolar.
Taylor Montgomery, 29-year-old worship leader.
Being sick. That's what we called it. It was just, oh, mom's sick. I didn't really understand what that meant. All I knew was that my mom would get really sad. Sometimes she couldn't even come out of her room. I think even as a kid, I was sad for her when I first found out because I thought, like, that's not fair. I want my mom to be able to go out into the sunshine. I want my mom to be able to play. I want my mom to enjoy what I enjoy.
You know, ever since it happened about a year ago, I've been thinking really hard if I missed anything. And honestly, I did not. I've asked my husband, I've asked my other son, nothing. If you're struggling mentally, there's going to be some symptoms. You're going to have some withdrawal. You won't be able to sleep, you'll be antisocial. But my son isn't like that. I'm sorry, I'm still saying isn't instead of wasn't.
My mom grew up in Africa, and the people there and the doctors there said that because she suffered from this since she was so young, I remember her saying that they once described her disorder as a monster that lives inside of her. That she, it was just so funny that they described it as a monster that lives inside of her that she needs to learn how to control. And she was my mom, so that's rough.
My son, my baby, I will never be the same. Never be the same. He's the youngest of the two. I'll miss those nights, you know, the good nights. I love you, Mom, when he came home. But, you know, I'm thankful.
I remember my sister being in the backyard yelling, "She's gonna kill me, she's gonna kill me." I remember thinking I wouldn't be surprised if she did. My mother and my sister fought like crazy. But then I saw her in the backyard with a knife. And I thought, what is she doing? So I ran into the backyard and I dropped to my knees and I said, "Mom, stop! Put down the knife." It was really scary. It's etched into me.
God has given me a great son. He's given me a great 17 years with my son. And I really just want to believe that it was his time to go. God needed him. And there's nothing that I could have done or anybody could have done to change him or to save him.
It was an event that even talking about it is hard because I can remember my mom's eyes. I can remember it was no longer my mom, but it was demonic. And it was just, I know it's a very, very, very weird way to describe it, but demonic. That's the only way I can describe it. It was dark and something. Like holding your breath. That's how I can describe it. It's like you hold your breath for a tornado and you hope that there's pieces left and survivors after.
I try to be brave, but it's hard, very hard. You know, I'm just trying to live again. It feels
21% of us suffer from a seriously debilitating mental disorder. 46% of us will deal with some form of mental illness during our lifetime, and despite this, over 60% of us will never receive treatment.
1 in every 5 veterans deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan will develop PTSD or severe depression. Those numbers jump to 30% for Vietnam veterans. Even though we know these facts, veterans are still twice as likely to commit suicide.
In the last year, 7% of us have attempted, and 15% of us have committed suicide.
Live like him. Live like Jay. Be loving. Be a person who puts a smile on everyone's face. And hopefully people will remember how he has lived. Not how he went, but how he has lived.
It's cleansing to tell the story. You can donate to all the organizations that you want. You can write a check, but it's this one at a time. Like at a candle lighting ceremony where they start with 1 candle, and then it's 2, and then it's 4, and you can get to 2,000 candles within about 5 minutes, but it all started with just 1. So that's all I am. Just one little candle.
2000. It's dark and it's late. All the other kids had gone home long ago. Eventually, my dad pulls up. I'm gonna ask you to be my dad, if that's okay? Yeah? Okay, come on, you don't have to do much, you just have to come sit out here on stage. All right, we're gonna give a round of applause. All the way from North Carolina. I didn't even know he was going to be here tonight. Yes, that one. Now, normally it's mom who picks me up, and normally she's on time. Normally I sit in the back because I'm 7 and I make things sticky. But this time it's Dad, and it's late, and he opens the door to the front passenger seat. Thank you. Yeah. I look at Dad. Dad looks at me. When something bad happens, your body feels it before your brain can even know what's going on. It's a survival mechanism that the stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol, flood your system. It feels like a trap door opening beneath you. Fight or flight, or stand as still as you can. I stood very still, looking at my dad. Eventually I got in the car. Dad had the music on, and he had been smoking with the windows down. Actually, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to be my dad, and you're going to be me as a 7-year-old. Okay? You got this. So, I should probably drive, so like, okay, now, the only thing you have to do is say why after everything I say. Why? Good job. Put on your seatbelt.
What?
Because cars can be dangerous. Because other drivers don't always pay attention. Well, there's a lot to think about when you're growing up. There are bills to pay, jobs to do, relationships to sustain, and there's never enough hours to do it all. Because there's only 24 hours in a day. Because that's how long it takes for the Earth to rotate. I don't know. Because I don't know everything. Because I don't know everything. Because that would be impossible.
we knew everything, then there would be no mystery, no curiosity, no creativity, no conversation, no discovery. Nothing would be new, and there'd be no need to use our imaginations, and our imaginations are what make life bearable.
Mom doesn't talk about all this heavy stuff.
Yeah, you're right, she doesn't. And without hope, our life would be unlivable.
You can't say words on that.
Can you just put on your seatbelt?
Okay.
Can you just put on your seatbelt? Because we're going to the hospital. Because your mother's hurt herself. Because she's sad. I don't know. I just don't. Can you put on your seatbelt?
Okay.
At least, that's how I like to imagine it happened. What actually happened is we just sat in silence. And the only thing he said to me was,
Your mother's done something very stupid.
I didn't know what he meant. Can we all give a thank you to my When we got to the hospital, my mom saw me and said, "Not her." So, I sat down in the corridor next to an old couple. They gave me juice and chocolate from the machine. Does anybody actually have any juice or chocolate? Or like anything like juice, like water? Like water, can I have that? I'm totally not gonna drink it, I'm just gonna What about chocolate? That one I might eat, just kidding. Chocolate, a snack, cracker.
Have candy?
You have candy?
Yeah.
Ah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, I don't know where the idea for the list actually started, but it was here, next to the old people, that I started to write it down. Number 1.
Ice cream.
Number 2.
Water fights!
Yeah. Number 3.
Staying up past your bedtime and being allowed to watch TV.
Oh, that's number 4.
The color yellow.
Yes. Number 5.
Things with stripes.
Number 6.
Roller coasters.
Ah! Number 7.
People falling over.
Number 8, juice. Number 9, chocolate. Number 10, kind old people who aren't weird and don't smell unusual. I don't like it. Dad stayed in with Mom for what seemed like ages. But when he finally came out, I followed him down the corridor, out the hospital, into the car park, in the car, in through the driveway, up through the front door, down the hallway, up into the stairs, into the study where he shut the door, and I couldn't follow him any further. I waited to hear what music he put on. I knew the rules. If it was this woman playing, I knew that I could go in. Ooh, it's quiet today. Let's turn it on. We can all hear it because it's a really good song. Come on, satellite. If it was the kind of song that you could sing and dance to, I could go in, but I ran the risk of being hugged and spun around in his chair.
Dad was working and I should be quiet. And if it sounded like all the instruments were falling down the stairs, it meant that I should leave him alone. So, standing by his door, I waited to hear what music he put on. So, I went downstairs and made myself a sandwich, ham and mayo, just without the ham. And I sat in front of the TV and I started working on the list. Now, it occurred to me that the list should be presented in no particular order. Like, who is to say that Tweety Bird is objectively better than Kraft mac and cheese? Number 23.
Tweety Bird.
Aha, number 24.
Kraft mac and cheese.
The SpongeBob kind, right? Number 25.
Where are you, Kate?
Yeah. Number 26.
Peeing in the sea and nobody knows.
Raise your hand if you've done it. Come on, we've all done it. Mom didn't come home for a week or so. And while she was gone, I had to talk to the school counselor, who was actually just Miss Patterson from the upper school. She was a really wonderful woman, the kind of woman you looked at and instantly trusted. I would ask you to be Mrs. Patterson, if that's okay? Yeah? Okay, so what she would do, and this is gonna sound really weird, but remember, it was before smartphones, and she got results. So, she would take off her shoe. Yes. And then she would talk to you, put it on her hand, and talk to you through her little shoe dog that she called, what did you call him? What was his name? Charles? Charles! Yes, right there. Yeah. So she would talk to Charles, and what she would do is Charles would ask you questions like, how are you feeling today?
How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling really good, Charles. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well.
You're brilliant. What kind of dog are you?
German Shepherd.
I love German Shepherds. You know, when I was little, we had a dog named Sweetie, and she was a cross between a beagle and a German Shepherd, because a beagle and a German Shepherd lived next door to each other, and there was a low fence. You're brilliant, by the way. Yeah. I'm gonna put you on my list. Number 164. Georgie. The sock dog. Charles. I like George too, but Charles is the sock dog. Have I told you about my list?
No.
Really? Okay. Well, I am making a list of 1,000 brilliant things. Now I'm not sure, but I think I might be a genius. It's been really nice talking to you today, but can I go?
Sure.
Thank you. Hey, thank you. You too. Thanks, Charles. Mom eventually did come home from the hospital. By that time, the list was 8 pages long, and it had 314 items in it. I laid it next to her pillow with the title, Every Brilliant Thing. She never mentioned it, but I know that she'd read it because she corrected my spelling. The list didn't save my mom. It couldn't. It shouldn't. But as the years went on, I became obsessed with social contagions, obesity, divorce, suicide. We're all subconsciously affected by the behavior of our peers. In the month after Marilyn Monroe died by overdose, in the US alone, the suicide rates went up by 20%. Every time a celebrity dies by suicide, or a character on a main network television takes their own life, there is a spike in suicide rates. Suicide is contagious. and TV and theater and how it's reported on the news. Actually, I found that the Samaritans had published a set of guidelines for how the media could intelligently report suicide. It's astonishing how little these guidelines are used. And even the way that we talk about suicide, they're really simple. Don't provide technical details. Never suggest that a method is quick, easy, painless, or certain to result in death. Avoid dramatic headlines, terms like suicide epidemic or hotspot. Avoid sensationalist pictures or video. Avoid excessive detail. Don't publish suicide notes. Don't publish on the front page. And don't ignore the complex realities suicide has and its impact on those that are left behind. Include references to support groups like NAMI San Diego, who we're so grateful for. And don't speculate the reason. That is crucial. Don't supply simplistic reasons like she lost her job, or he went bankrupt, or they're going through a divorce. I can assure you it is never that simple. And I have one last piece of advice for anyone who is contemplating suicide. It's really easy. Don't do it. Things will get better. They might not get brilliant, but they will get better.
I love origami. I love creating it. I love making something out of this fragile piece of paper. I love how every edge connects to the other edge, only to reconfigure and make it into a beautiful shape. It's misleading. This fragile piece of paper is nothing at first. But once you fold it, and all the pieces come together and it fits, it becomes something so beautiful out of something so breakable. Origami as a whole is fragments, but all these fragments come together to make a whole, like life. Life is a bunch of fragments, bunch of events that fall together to give you a whole. I grew up an orphan. I never met my parents. And the nuns at the orphanage, well, they were just nuns. I have many flashbacks. I can still feel the sticks on my skin and hear the whispers at night. You're a bad kid. You will never learn. Bad children get punished. Sometimes I get this feeling on my chest like my heart is gonna come out, and I get sweaty and I can't stop walking back and forth. I feel like the walls are gonna close on me and I can't stop crying. I can't find the will to get out of my bed. Deep down on me, I know I'm crazy. It's one of my fragments. And I hope the other pieces of my fragments find themselves and fit. But I don't know how to put them together. They tell me I need help.
so hesitant our first meeting, she didn't even stay long enough for me to be able to ask her the necessary questions. She came back one other time after that first meeting, and I could tell she was in pain, but she couldn't tell me in a way that I could understand. She didn't trust the language barrier. She didn't have the ability to convey the hurt that she was feeling inside, and I got frustrated not being able to communicate with her the way that I can with my other patients. The system is broken. There is a significant number of people living with mental illness that I can't help because of language barriers. So many people could easily be helped, and they fall through the cracks. I mean, mental illness doesn't only affect English-speaking people. Finally, after a month of phone calls, we got her to come back. I had an interpreter convince her. There's something so spectacular about being able to create something so strong out of something so delicate.
Buenos días, señora. Me llamo Verónica. Voy a ser su intérprete de español. Voy a interpretar en todo lo que hablemos hoy en la cita con Dr. Brown.
Ay, no, no te preocupes, está mi hija afuera. ¡Hija!
Que su hija se quede afuera y se relaje. Yo le voy a ayudar hoy, ¿ok?
¿Está bien?
Good morning, Senor Pizarro. It's good to see you again. How have you been feeling?
Mamita, dile a la gringuita que no estoy
Little girl, tell the white lady I'm not crazy. Tell her really nicely.
Don't worry, I don't think that you're crazy. However, I do want to know, how are you feeling? Have you been feeling depressed? How have your mood swings been?
No se preocupe, yo no creo que usted esté loca, pero quiero saber cómo se ha sentido hoy. Últimamente ha tenido depresión. ¿Cómo está su estado de ánimo?
Dile que el gordito, el doctor me mandó. Que, bueno, pues a veces todos lloramos, ¿no? Pero a mí siempre me dijeron, nunca te quejes, tú para adelante nomás.
The fat guy sent me here. We all get sad sometimes, you know? That's just life. But they've always told me, deal with it, get over it.
It's okay to cry sometimes. That's normal. Here in the USA, during counseling, we talk about what is bothering us and we try to fix it. If your sadness is causing you lack of sleep or fatigue or not allowing you to do everyday things, then we want to talk about it. Don't worry. Everything that you say here is confidential.
Está bien llorar a veces. Aquí en los Estados Unidos platicamos de lo que nos está preocupando en terapias y yo estaré aquí para ayudarle. Si esta depresión le está causando mucha fatiga o no se puede levantar de la cama, yo estaré aquí para ayudarle. No se preocupe que todo lo que hablemos será confidencial.
Ah, yo confío en ti, mamita, pero en la gringuita. Pero no quiero que me metan en una casa de locos. Y la verdad es que sí me siento mal. Hay días en que ni me puedo levantar.
Well, I trust you, little girl, but I don't know about that white girl. But I don't want to go to any crazy house. To be honest, I do feel bad. There are days I feel I can't get up.
Okay, so on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being the best that you feel and 10 being the worst that you feel, what number are you at today?
Entonces, en una escala de 0 al 10, siendo 0 el que se siente súper bien y 10 el que es lo peor que se ha sentido, ¿en qué número está hoy?
¿Qué? Ay, pues con todo lo que me ha pasado, ¿cómo voy a ponerle un número? Qué graciosa la doctora. Dile que necesito más números.
Well, with everything I have going on, I can't put it on one number. How funny is this doctor, but I'll need more numbers.
In the past, have you been diagnosed with depression?
En el pasado, ¿alguna vez la han diagnosticado con depresión?
No me vengan con eso. Esta es la primera vez que yo vengo a un doctor para la cabeza. Yo no estoy loca, es solo que me canso. ¿Acaso la doctora es tan sana que nunca se cansa? Mira, yo no estoy ahí por afuera gritando como los loquitos o con bolsas de basura, no. Yo solo estoy triste. Es la vida.
No, don't start coming with that. This is the first time I've come to a doctor for the head. I'm not crazy. I just get really tired. What, the doctor's so healthy she never gets tired? I'm not out in the streets screaming or wearing trash bags like the crazy people. I just get really sad. That's life, no?
So, no one has ever prescribed you any drugs for depression or any...
¿Drogas?
señora, la doctora sí dijo drugs, pero no se refiere a drogas ilegales como marihuana. La traducción en este caso es medicamento. La doctora quiere saber si alguna vez le han recetado algún medicamento para la salud mental.
Ah, ok. No, señorita, yo no tomo pastillas. Eso te pone bien zombie. Y aparte, pregúntale, porque yo creo que solamente le dan pastillas a los loquitos, ¿no?
No, miss, we don't take pills. And besides, I only thought they medicate crazy people.
Your primary doctor was concerned that you've been having some problems at home with your daughter, and he mentioned that you don't want to get out of bed, that you can't find happiness, and that you've lost hope. Sometimes medication can help. Depression is nothing to be ashamed of. Think of it this way, a diabetic needs medication to level their insulin. With depression, we can prescribe medication to help you balance your mood swings and help you feel like you can do things with your family and enjoy your life.
No lo piense así, señor. Está bien. En este caso, está bien sentirse mal, pero yo le puedo ayudar. Con medicamentos le puedo estabilizar su modo de ánimo y piénsalo de esta manera. Un diabético necesita insulina para controlar su enfermedad. Es lo mismo con la depresión. Yo le puedo ayudar y recetarle medicamentos para estabilizar su estado de ánimo y de esa manera puede levantarse de la cama y puede salir y hacer cosas con sus seres queridos.
Pues, la verdad es que yo quisiera sentirme feliz, pero no lo he logrado y he tratado mucho. ¿Usted me puede ayudar? ¿Usted está segura que yo podría hablar de estas cosas? Porque yo no sé cómo.
Well, I would like to feel happy. I've been trying all my life, but I don't know how. Do you think you could help me? You know, I've been talking about these things, and I don't know how exactly because no one's ever taught me.
Every time you come here, you will have an interpreter. If your medication helps, we'll keep it. If not, we'll change it.
Cada vez que usted venga, tendrá un intérprete. De esa manera podemos platicar y discutir sus medicamentos. Si le ayudan, se los quedamos. Si no, se los podemos quitar. It took her weeks to open up. But I can only imagine what it would have been like for her if therapy was not available. And I thought this is why it's so difficult for non-English speaking people to get help. And this is why it's so taboo in so many different cultures. I sat there interpreting every heartbreak she had, every experience. She relived everything from her days in the orphanage getting beat to her getting out and trying to figure out what's wrong with her. She talked about her depression, now that she can name it, and her anxiety. And even though she didn't speak the same language, she knew she was being heard, and it made a difference. I remember fighting back tears as she cried about the birth of her daughter, happy tears, and moments of her life that folded into valleys and mountains. Every piece of her life was fitting perfectly to make this beautiful origami.
Attention! Sailor's Creed!
I am a United States sailor.
Right, heads!
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America.
Above heads!
I will obey the orders of those appointed over me. I represent the fighting spirit of the Navy and those who have gone before me to defend freedom and democracy around the world.
Left heads!
I proudly serve my country's Navy combat team with
Louder! Above heads!
honor, courage, and commitment. I am committed to excellence and the fair treatment of all.
Fall out! Except for you, Petty Officer Castillo.
I was raped on the ship. Well, that's a great way to start a conversation. Sorry. So there I was. You know, every sailor knows that all good sea story starts with, so there I was. It's almost like once upon a time. So there I was, 18 and a senior in high school. The plane struck the towers and I got all united we stand and enlisted to become a military nurse. I mean, dope, right? I thought that's what my parents wanted for me because I thought becoming a nurse is what defines the success of the American Filipino. I'm just kidding, okay? But nonetheless, Mom, Dad, and my brother were so very proud of my chosen path. I never really told them what happened. They have a tiny clue, I'm sure. Now they know. But pain from these invisible wounds have always been easy for me to hide. See? Some days are better than others. I bet you think I'm a badass, yeah? Well, fuck it. I was so ashamed of myself because I didn't even fight back. I barely remember it happening. And then NCIS interrogated me the very night it happened, asking me multiple ways if I believed I was raped. Wondered why I didn't report it, but credited one of my assaulters who beat me to it by claiming a change of consciousness. He was released and let go. And then NCIS told me that if I didn't have evidence, like ripped clothing, DNA, a ripped vagina, or if I fought back or said no, that the worst case scenario is that I would be court-martialed for lying and will be removed from service. Fuck no. I tried to keep it to myself. But the ship's rumor mill was in full operation and I became known on the boat for that pretty Panay who got caught having sex in the sick bay. No one believed that two of their very own hospital corpsmen preyed on me in the sandbox on Liberty. Got me drunk out of my mind, handing me drinks left and right, while I mourned the very recent suicide of my closest shipmate. My only option was to accept the punishment and the UCMJ charges I faced at Captain's Mast, because a scandal like this would surely ruin my CO's chances of becoming the fleet's first female admiral. There was no investigation. Captain's Mast happened the next day the incident happened. There was a rape kit, yeah. That's like a pap smear on steroids. That's punishment in itself. Plus, half a month's pay times 2, plus extra military instruction and drills every day, twice a day, like scrubbing toilets with toothbrushes and being confined to the ship for 45 days. Fuck that. I took it. I kept quiet, prayed, journaled, listened to music in my rack, studied morning and night, trained in the gym every day, volunteered as much as they'd let me, mentored every boot that came after me, and I even performed, singing at numerous ceremonies and events, representing my command, the very command that tried to break my fighting spirit. I just aimed for the spotlight and watched them as they sat front row, and I put them to shame as they watched me. Dirtbags. But not talking about it was my shame. And that's stupid because not talking about it now is the shame too. After some time, those wounds finally prepped up. But shit, I miss my uniform and the camaraderie and those good old days, really, because I adapted, improvised, and overcame that shit. Fuck, I'm a motherfucking potty mouth ass sailor now, huh? Salty and shit. Woo-wee. But now that I'm out, it's just so hard to find people who understand where I'm coming from, how hard it is to just be happy and maintain a healthy mindset. How? It's so hard to just readjust, to overcome PTSD, adjustment disorder, anxiety, and depression. I'm changed. I'm different now. I'm just so angry at everything. Not anyone else, really, but myself for letting it happen. Because I joined the military to go to war, but I didn't join to get raped by my brothers. But I'm still me, no matter my mental health. And I am still proud of that decision to join the military because I made that choice for myself. The Navy owes me for thinking they can punish me for that because I'm not going anywhere. And neither are you. As much as you want to give up, don't. Because you are not alone. And you never were. But you gotta get up so we can fight this shit together. Fuck, I'm tired of hearing it. Roughly 22 veterans per day are taking their own lives. Earlier this year, there were 3 VA parking lot suicides in the span of 5 days. 25 VA suicides in the last 2 years as some kind of desperate form of protest against the very system and government we served that's not serving us. You matter. Your feelings, your voice, your stories all matter. Be patient with yourself. Breathe. We can heal and grow from trauma and pain, step by step, breath by breath. We can strive for peace and love, man. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to open up. I plan to live more than 100 years, so if I'm feeling ill, I'm going to the doctor. I'm going to trust in my strength and remind myself, and you should too, that I've been through worse. I'm going to figure out the damn VA, and life, and love, and the pursuit of happiness. It took me literally 10 years to pick up the phone and call the Veterans Crisis Line, walk into the San Diego Vet Center, and then to the VA hospital, and ask for help. And it finally dawned on me that every military hospital and office was actually a trigger. And one of the main reasons why it took so long. Once upon a time, I proudly served my country, faced unwanted adversity, but I have not forgotten how to be a warrior. We're humans. We fight and survive together for each other. It's in our blood. Am I right? Yeah! Yeah! So listen up. This is what you're gonna do. When I ask, are you ready? You will respond with, always ready. Are you ready?
Always ready.
Now repeat after me. 1-800. 273-TALK.
273-TALK.
One more time. 1-800. 273-TALK. 273-TALK. It's the National Suicide Prevention Line. Memorize it. Add it to your contacts later. Post it online. You're gonna do it anyway. Share it with your friends. But most importantly, remember that you are not alone. Are you ready? Always ready! Thank you for listening.
All right, well, friends, we made it to the end of the show. We're proud of you. So thank you so much for giving us your time. I know I'm not supposed to thank you officially yet, but here we go. I'm glad to have you here. So since we're here at the end of the show, one more time, my name is Alexis.
I'm Emily.
And we are going to be singing Little Talks by Monsters and Men. So some of you know this, some of you don't. I have non-combat related PTSD. And that means that I got PTSD from a trauma outside of a war zone. And this can be one big event, it can be a bunch of tiny sequential events. Mine was the latter. But that lives me to deal with triggers. I know a lot of people say #triggered often, it's a thing that's said, but after hearing about what a trigger really is, I'm really hoping maybe perchance you'll think about using another word next time and let your friends know. So with a trigger, it's like being in a current situation or talking to someone, and if it at all reminds your brain of your previous trauma, your brain and your body responds as if you're back in that situation. And sometimes that can be a minor thing, or sometimes it can be really all-encompassing. So with triggers, past and present, they collide, and what's true and what's false and what's right and what's wrong, they all get mixed up, and it's really hard to tell. And so that's something I liked about this song, because I feel that the lyrics really touch on that.
Yes, everything Alexis just said. I have also dealt firsthand with mental illness, all around the board: anxiety, ADD, OCD. I have a diagnosis of bipolar 2 disorder. Bipolar disorder causes the brain to have extreme mood swings, if you will, that vary in length. So that's episodes of mania or hypomania. In my case, you feel euphoric, unstoppable, even irritable, and then you get the lows of depression where you're defeated the very moment you wake up. You feel hopeless, helpless, and that can last for weeks, months. And it is still has me questioning how I can trust my own emotions, my own feelings. Are they delusions? Like, is this just this thing living inside of me? And it's a hard thing to carry. And we've heard, I feel like, that narrative in a lot of these pieces today. And it just, reminds me, like, this is why we need healing. Everyone needs access to the resources that are there. We need healing, not at just the individual level, but a community level. And this is why Alexis started this event, to remind us to reach out and listen to each other's stories, learn our own stories, which is really hard, and love and heal. And that's also what Little Talks is about. It's a super sweet song about being an ally, even when you're struggling in your own, and you can share that with another.
So we've all just taken a lot in tonight, so we're going to give you a very healthy way to get it all out, which is audience participation. Yay! I heard y'all do it for Carolyn's piece. You can do it for this one too. Okay? There we go. All right, so later on in the song, you're going to hear something like this. Give it to them.
Oh yeah.
And I'm going to point at you and want you to say, hey! Okay, so
We're gonna give this a try. Yeah, you know it.
Hey! Okay, we're going to try it again, or we're going to start the whole show over. And actually have the doors locked on my second. All right, my friends, we ready?
Always ready.
Nice, thank you guys. All right, ready? Here we go. Hey! That's what I'm talking about, and that's how we close the show. Okay, let it out. So, without further ado, my friends, this is not Wonderwall. This is Little Talks by Monsters and Men. genetically predisposed to an imbalances of chemicals in the brain? And if so, how is brain chemistry altered as people are affected by life?
Wonderful question. Thank you. So, well, before I answer, I just want to thank all of the actors and actresses. It's so powerful, evocative, inspiring. So thank you all for what you do. To answer the questions, I'm a psychiatrist. Many of you are probably thinking I only prescribe medications. That's what I do because that's what I'm sitting here talking about. I want to give a disclaimer. I'm a psychiatrist who happens to oversee the psychotherapy training for our residency, so I may not be who you are assuming me to be. All that being said is, to answer the question, it's not a simple answer. The brain is the most elegant and fascinating and also mysterious organ that we have. And for anyone to tell you they know exactly why people have mental illness or how medicines work would actually not be telling the whole picture. The question, though, was about, are we born, people who have a mental illness, are people born with a chemical imbalance or predisposition to it? And what we know is that there's this beautiful interplay between what we're born with, our genetics, the biology, and then the environment. And as far as we understand, people are born with different predispositions to develop different conditions, whether it be diabetes, whether it be mental illness, and it's how that genetic background interplays with the environment, with their life experiences, that really puts them at risk for an imbalance. The more we understand about the brain, the more we understand it's not really a chemical imbalance we're talking about, but rather it's the circuitry of the brain, basically how one part of the brain talks to another part of the brain. And that when life hits us with enough hits, if you will, if we're so predisposed, any of us can develop mental illness. There's not a single family that I know of that doesn't have some mental illness in it, or that won't. And so this is something that obviously affects all of us.
Thank you so much. And I was wondering, does medication help with all of that? What does medication actually do?
Yes, so you can't, I guess, have a psychiatrist on the panel and not ask that. So medications are oftentimes quite stigmatized and oftentimes given a very bad reputation. And the way I view medications is, the simple answer is yes. The more complicated answer is that medications are just one of many tools that we as mental health professionals have to help mental illness. Medications do not change people, in case you're going to ask about myths about medications.
That was my next question.
Oh, are you okay if I answer?
Oh, no, go for it. Yeah,
yours. Wonderful. So, the misconceptions about medications are oftentimes that they control you as the person who takes it, or that they're trying to fundamentally change who you are. And nothing could be further from the truth as many of us see it, that rather people live with symptoms that cause distress, that cause suffering. And medications can lower that suffering to the point where people can then pursue the things that really count in this world: meaning, connection, and purpose. And so the medications, once again, the goal of them is just to alleviate the suffering, alleviate the symptoms, to then do some of the other very important work that helps us all engage in life in a fulfilled way.
All right, thank you so much. So that's what we have for you. Can we give a round of applause? So other than talk therapy, Candace, what other types of therapy are available, and what are the benefits of going to therapy?
There's amazing benefits of going to therapy. Sometimes with PTSD, some of the most dramatic ways of being able to help yourself recover sometimes doesn't include talking. And there are, EMDR is a very well empirically validated intervention, as well as different types of biofeedback. And then most recently, I just got trained in a new P300 brainwave scanning device that they just got approved by the FDA about 3 months ago, where you can actually within 7 minutes get your brain scanned. And they're forward thinking on this is to have it done as a part of your mental health checkup. So when you go into your doctor and you visit, you'll also be able to have your brain scan as well, which would be this amazing thing. I've already started some trials with some very generous individuals who helped me with this. And it's made a really big difference in being able to help
treat them not only with other mechanisms that I use in my practice, but also for them to understand how their brain works. And it's so quick, and the device is portable, which is really, really great because it means that it can be available to not only, maybe in the past where EEGs were only available to someone who had some maybe type of concussion or brain trauma, but now the predictors and the markers and the research they're developing on it are being able to help them associate and understand with quite good efficacy ADHD, depression, anxiety, as well as concussions, a history of concussions, and then a predictability of Alzheimer's as well, which is pretty incredible when you think about that. Yeah, it's pretty incredible stuff. So yeah, there's a ton of stuff. So much is coming in into the world of mental health that's allowing individuals to recover, and they're working really hard to be able to make it available to many different, not only people who could have afforded it, but also people who couldn't have. So that's pretty incredible.
Wow, that was great. That's wonderful. So let's see. I have two more things to ask.
Sure.
What is one thing that what you wish people knew about therapy?
I wish they knew about therapy is that that one, you have options. So there's lots of, you don't always have to stick with one therapy. And it has a variety. It comes in different seasons in your life. So you can go for a brief time sometimes, and sometimes you can go for a longer period of time. And to know that as you're going through your therapy process, sometimes sometimes you make great strides and sometimes you make little strides, but the effort that you put into it is part of the journey that we all have as human beings, I think. So.
Okay, great, thank you. And then last is, what have you found is the biggest roadblock for people in their healing process?
So this is a really remarkable thing. Sometimes when you go into therapy, if you've kind of been put into a position where you're not really wanting to be there, there's this really great amount of research that has been done out of Baylor by a gentleman named Dr. David Engelman, and he did it. He's trying to revolutionize, or trying to change our justice system, for convicts and stuff like that, and how long their sentences are done. And one of the things he came across when he was doing fMRIs with individuals that were having, they're trying to tailor sentencing time to brain scans and trying to figure out, can we shorten them? He would do all these brain scans, and he could help an individual develop a healthy brain. But the thing that he kept coming up against again and again was that if the individual wasn't willing to, then it was a real big determinant factor of whether or not they were going to have not reconviction, I can't remember, but they're going to be, they're basically going to commit another crime. And so I think that's true for a lot of us. Sometimes we may not find the results that we're looking for, but sometimes if we can just dig down and start to understand if the willingness is there, sometimes that's enough to help us to move to a place where we need to go. So even all the conditions might be really good, but if we struggle with the willingness, sometimes that's the place we have to start with. And so we can get a lot of interventions, but sometimes the part of us that's struggling with the will is the support that we may need.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, so what are the biggest misconceptions that you have found that people have regarding mental illness?
The biggest misconceptions that people have regarding mental illness is it's somebody else. And when we talk about 1 in 5, which is conservative, that's 1 in 5 with beating hearts, because children, as we know, also have mental health conditions, and there are enough people in this country who are living with a mental health condition to populate France. There's a lot of people, so that's the biggest one.
All right, and of course every situation is different, but what is the best way that an ally can support someone who is struggling with mental illness?
Wonderful question.
Thank you.
It really is, and I do a lot of speaking, and I talk to a lot of people, and there are 3 questions that people always have. And the first question is, how can I get my loved one to know they have a mental health condition? How can I get them to understand that? And the second question is, how can I get them to take medication? And the third question is, how can I get my family to help me? You have to change the question, okay? I can't answer those questions. Nobody can answer those questions. We understand mental health illness, mental health condition is a traumatic experience for the individual and for the family. And we understand that the entire family unit, if we're lucky, will be going through this side by side. So it is imperative for people to understand that you have to be respectful and you have to allow the individual who lives with a mental health condition to have dignity because they know what's best for them, right? It might not be what I think, but as long as we can work together to make sure that we are taking care of your needs the way that you need them taken care of, that does it. It really does. And get as much education as you can. This stuff, it's not rocket science, but it is rocket science. And if you come to a class or you come to a group, you will find other people who have similar experiences, and it is so helpful. It is really helpful. I don't know if that answered it.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much for that. It's extremely important. All right, and those are the questions I have for you. Thank you so much. Hi, Dr. Brown.
Hello.
I actually trained with Dr. Brown at the Dialectical Behavioral Therapy Center of San Diego. Yeah, right? DBT, it's some good stuff, you guys. All right. So, can you tell us what DBT is?
Dialectical behavior therapy is an approach that comes out of psychology research, so it's grounded in science. It's a form of cognitive behavioral therapy that is more complete and more balanced than traditional forms of cognitive behavioral therapy. And so cognitive behavioral therapy means we focus on helping people with their functioning and their emotions by focusing on behavior and by focusing on cognition, which means thought processes. But previous attempts have been more focused on changing people, focus on thinking differently, behaving differently, and not balancing it out with the other side, which is acceptance. And so dialectical means balance between apparent opposites. So dialectical behavior therapy has an equal focus on trying to change things and also trying to accept things. And it was developed for people who have extreme struggle with emotion, people who have very intense emotions, who find emotions very painful and oftentimes very much feel ashamed about their emotions, like they shouldn't have them, so they're very judgmental of their emotions, and a lot of that comes from their difficult histories, trauma, or difficulties in their families. And emotions tend to take over, and so when they get emotionally distressed, it tends to create behaviors and makes them do things that have negative consequences, like impulsive behaviors of a variety of types. Self-injury is one such example. And dialectical behavior therapy is balanced in that with that emotional struggle, the idea is to help people in a very balanced way try to possibly sometimes regulate their emotions, meaning to feel better, but not have everything dependent on that. So it's also a set of skills for learning to tolerate emotion, learning to be an emotional person skillfully, gracefully, and bear emotion without falling apart, basically. And a lot of why they struggle with emotion is because their lives have a lot of things in it that are not right. And one of the goals, meaning not effective, one of the goals, as the developer, Marshall Linehan, said, is to build a life worth living. A lot of people don't like that description because it implies that their current life is not worth living. So we tried telling her, not everybody receives that phrase very well, so we often then phrase it as building meaning in life. And so even with things that are unsatisfactory, learning to find joy in life, learning to try to make some modifications in life, but also tolerating and accepting the things in life that can't change or can't change as much as we would like. So it's changing life and accepting life. And a lot of those things in life that cause the emotion struggle are relationships. So a lot of the skills in DBT are about trying to improve relationships, but also balancing that out with trying to accept those behaviors that we get from other really important people that are not the way we want them to be. So they are coping skills. They're skills for how to use our mind and do things that help us tolerate things in our relationships that are not satisfactory. So it's balanced. A lot of skills. It's comprehensive. So most people who get the full program, they attend a skills group. That's its own meeting every week. It's an outpatient therapy. They come in once per week for skills training, usually done in a group, and they meet one-on-one with the therapist for everything else. And it's mostly about solving problems and learning how to cope with things that are hard.
All right, thank you. And could you tell us what mindfulness is and what a quick practice would be?
So the idea is that a lot of emotional suffering obviously comes from things in life that are not going well, but our minds create a big part of the emotional suffering. Our minds trick us. Our minds tell us lies. Our minds make up things and our minds act like the things that we tell ourselves are facts. And we sometimes really struggle to tell the difference between thoughts and facts. We interpret things, we have guesses about other people's thoughts, we have guesses about the future, and in our minds, those thoughts are their own reality. So we have trouble telling the difference. So with that being a major source of emotion struggle, DBT tries to use principles from mindfulness, which come from many traditions in the world, Christian traditions and Buddhist traditions. Many religious and spiritual traditions have had as part of the practice of focusing the mind and paying attention to things in very particular ways that help us see reality for what it really is. And so mindfulness is tuning into reality, paying very close attention outside of ourselves and inside of ourselves. So a big part of the practice falls under what we might sometimes call meditation, being aware of our internal experiences and our thoughts. So one of the practices with mindfulness is to practice watching our minds and to see thoughts as our minds generate them so that we can step back and not have thoughts control us so much as they tend to. So we can have thoughts and not suffer, have thoughts and not make those thoughts make us do things that cause problems for us. So we learn not to always believe our thoughts when we practice watching our thoughts. So it's a practice of living life or sitting quietly, watching thoughts, and learning to see them for what they are, not be tricked.
All right, thank you so much. And at this time, we can open the floor for 2 questions. So if anyone has anything that they'd like to ask, feel free to raise a hand. We have time for 1 question. Thank you so much. All right. May I have 1 question, please? I think I saw it. Yes?
No, you had your hand up first. Go for it. Are you sure? Oh, no. That's my daughter. Hi. I am daughter.
Hello, daughter. I think it's your turn.
Wasting my questions. Okay. One thing, I've been in the mental health system since I was in elementary school. I have anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder, and depression, and PTSD, complex PTSD. And the one thing that I've noticed, and the one thing that I'm curious about, is if there's any motion forward towards further research and understanding within the system on racial trauma. So since we live in a system of racial oppression and white supremacy, how specifically those things affect people of color, and how we need to rephrase our research and our understanding of what mental health is for those people of color who grew up in those systems. Because that's something I've never had an answer for, and I've never had proper care for.
Wow, all right. So since we don't have too much time, Suzette, do you mind answering that one?
Would you come work with me, please? Would you talk to me after?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I hear that in
Yeah.
every church I speak at, every school, every parent group, and I don't know what the answer is,
Yeah.
but something has to be done.
I would absolutely love to.
Wow, well that was a beautiful way to end our talk back. We